Okay, let's have a look at another WarFrame and give her a score and an overview. This time we're going to be looking at a WarFrame called Zephyr. So Zephyr is of course a bird-based airbender WarFrame. Let's have a look at her skills. Her first skill is Tailwind, and Tailwind is actually a multifaceted ability. In other words, it's one button but it does a couple of things. So when you're just looking out and about and you want to fly in that general direction, you can press 1 like so and you will fly in that general direction. That also includes looking up in a 45-degree angle where you might end up a lot further than you expect because of angle math, so that's really good. Her second part of Tailwind is that if you hold your first ability whilst on the ground like so, you can actually build up a charge, and that charge will then result in a direct upward burst of direction into flight, and you can also then hover in the air like so. Basically, the more you charge, the more duration you have in the air, so that's going to be really useful. You can then use it for things like this. So let's say we charge up straight into the air, we can then fire our weapon like so. So you become a bit of an air turret. And of course this allows us to use the final part of her Tailwind ability, which is if you look directly down like so, you do a dive bomb. And dive bomb will result in some damage as well as some knockdown effects. Zephyr's second ability is called Air Burst. So Air Burst throws out a burst of air, and on contact with the ground or on contact with enemies, that burst of air results in an explosive knockback. You can use it on enemies like so, you can fling them off the map. Keep in mind that if you happen to be in the air when you use Air Burst actually uses less energy, so that is something you want to keep an eye on if you want to use Air Burst a lot. Zephyr's third ability is called Turbulence. So Turbulence generates an aura of air that actually redirects any and all projectile weapons, any and all projectile fire that is coming straight at you will then be flown to somewhere else. Other things like melee damage and knockbacks and all that stuff, that will still hit you, but as you can see, those bullets are flying off in random directions as a result of using Turbulence. And for Zephyr's final ability, it is going to be Tornadoes, which is literally generating 4 tornadoes that will then crowd control enemies and potentially fling them across the map after a period of time. Zephyr's passive is that she has far less gravity when she is in the air. So if we are in the air like so, you'll notice that she falls to the ground a lot more gracefully than most other people with a hard thud. So that also includes when you are aim gliding, that also includes other kinds of aerial mobilities. You're also able to sort of steer yourself a little bit better in the air, although frankly that doesn't really mean a whole lot. Okay, let's talk about Zephyr's damage output. So Zephyr's damage output appears to come mainly from the use of her tornadoes. And how does that work? Well, here we have a build for tornadoes, but we're actually missing an augment because I'm not going to be talking about that augment until a little bit later. So this build does rely a lot more on efficiency, duration, and range, and we're not going to be using a whole lot of strength. We're still going to try and keep ourselves as close to 100% power strength as possible, because I feel like running a 40% power strength on even Zephyr is probably not such a good idea. So if you use a weapon like the Rubico Prime, it is of course a single shot weapon. Tornadoes has the fun idea of turning any single shot weapon into a area of effect weapon, like so. Of course, the problem is that they do sometimes fling enemies off from themselves, or they end up going all over the place, which is kind of unfortunate. The idea is basically if you shoot a tornado, any enemy that is caught by that tornado takes in the damage as well. But that's if you can actually hit the tornado. With a sniper rifle, it might be a little bit easier to hit the tornado, in which case you may want to pair Zephyr up with something like the Rubico Prime. But as you can just see there, that tornado went left and right, which is extremely annoying. Makes it really difficult to hit that enemy. In my opinion, I feel like it's a lot more difficult to hit a tornado sometimes than it is to actually just hit that enemy before it even gets caught by a tornado. As you may have also noticed, tornadoes are also capable of putting status procs on enemies depending on the element of your weapon, but frankly I'm not particularly impressed by that at all. You can actually control tornadoes just by aiming your weapon at something, but the tornadoes are either sometimes too slow to get there, or sometimes they get there and then they just kind of do that wibbly wobbly lefty righty thing like I already demonstrated. So instead of flinging enemies around the map as part of trying to do damage to them through your tornadoes, you may want to use an augment like Funnel Clouds. Funnel Clouds being a tornado augment creates 8 additional tornadoes. Each tornado will be 50% of their original size and they won't pick up enemies. So if we add that into our build, we kind of then have to change the way we're going to be playing with Zephyr. And the way that we want to play with Zephyr using funnel clouds is apparently to use an AoE weapon. So we're going to start off with using a weapon like the lens. The lens, of course, being a very popular, although not as popular now, AoE bow, the original AoE bow. Let's use that against these corrupted heavy gunners. So here we have our tornadoes like so, and then you kind of just use your AoE, and then you basically kill these fighters a lot faster. Kill these corrupted heavy gunners a lot faster because of the power of the tornado. I guess it's more of a sort of multiplication type thing where even the tornadoes are doing extra damage against those fighters, so you basically have 8 bits of damage attacking those fighters. Personally though, I don't feel like funnel clouds is all that good because it relies on using a really powerful AoE weapon. So this speaks more to the AoE weapon than it does to the funnel clouds themselves. Although the lens being not that particularly strong against heavy gunners, I guess it is a little bit impressive that the funnel clouds are able to do a bit more damage against those corrupted heavy gunners for your lens. An alternative to using tornadoes is to use an augment like target fixation. Target fixation is a tailwind augment. Basically, any enemy that is hit by tailwind will increase tailwind's damage by 100%. That damage will then reset if you happen to be on the ground for 2 seconds. This method is probably a bit more fun to use as opposed to using the tornadoes. So you could use something like dive bomb. This will then massively increase the damage from tailwind, or even just dive bomb. But as you can see here, it's a lot more effective at killing trash mobs, not quite effective at killing heavy enemies like corrupted heavy gunners. If I were to use this method to attack these 2 corrupted heavy gunners, or even these 3 corrupted heavy gunners, it's going to take a bloody long time, so I'm not even going to bother doing that at all. So in terms of damage, tornadoes are alright, I guess. They're not the best thing in the world, but they're able to do the job, okay? It is a little bit easier to aim at the tornadoes using something like a Rubico Prime or something that is hit scan as opposed to using a bow, so I guess that kind of explains why I didn't really understand how tornadoes worked for the longest time in the world, because I kept on using a bow. So probably don't want to be using that. Instead, Rubico Prime, really good choice if you're going to be using it with Zephyr. Target fixation, on the other hand, is a fun and interesting way to build up a damage meter and also get a ton of stacks, but this only seems to be really good against trash mobs. Against heavy enemies, you're going to be having a much slower and more tedious time. So I feel like altogether, I would probably only give Zephyr's damage output a score of 5 out of 10, despite the fact that funnel clouds is really powerful if you use something like the lens. The lens itself is kind of good by itself, especially against trash mobs. Against heavy enemies, it is good to use something like funnel clouds, I guess, but I feel like overall this is kind of in the middle range area when it comes to damage output. Okay, let's talk about Zephyr's survivability. Now, right out of the gate, Zephyr comes with above average health, above average shields, and above minimal armor. However, Zephyr's survivability really comes more from the use of turbulence. So turbulence, of course, being her 3rd ability, creates an aura of air that redirects all projectile fire. For example, here we have turbulence active against these corrupted heavy gunners and even corrupted bombards. So as you can see, the missiles are flying off in random directions, and the bullets are just straight up not hitting me. So that makes it really, really powerful for keeping Zephyr alive against ranged enemies like heavy gunners and bombards. What's great about this ability is that it has full coverage, so there's no such thing as a front or back or side shield. It's not like Volt's shield, it's not like Garuda's Dread Mirror. It's a full coverage ability, so it doesn't matter where we are, even if they are behind me, even if they are in front of me, it don't matter because they still cannot hit me. The only weakness that Turbulence possesses is that it's completely ineffective against melee enemies. So slams, axes, all of that stuff, that will still hit you. It's also completely ineffective against gas clouds from Mutualist Ospreys. It's also ineffective against nearby explosions, so any explosions that happen to be caused in front of you, they're going to still hit you as well. And the Grenier Crazy Cat ladies are capable of hitting you with their Ignises. So that's definitely something that you want to keep an eye on. So even though Zephyr isn't exactly tanking through damage, nor is she healing herself, I feel like being able to just actively avoid all incoming range damage through Turbulence is really, really powerful, and it definitely keeps her alive on the battlefield for a lot of time. However, unlike Limbo's Rift, she's still vulnerable to non-rage things, so we're going to take a couple of points off for that. So I will give Zephyr a survivability score of 7 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about Zephyr's crowd control. So Zephyr has a lot of crowd control to use. First, of course, being tornadoes, that is going to be some very simple crowd control like so. So that's really powerful by itself. Being able to pick up your enemies and fling them around the map basically causes them to not be able to do anything. So these are all effectively hard stuns as well. So that's really good. Also, if you have your enemies under low ceilings, apparently that stops the tornadoes from flinging them across the map. So that might be something you may want to look into, especially if you're in, say, the Corpus tile sets, like the Corpus ship tile sets, or even the Grenadier tile sets. That's probably something you may want to look into using for crowd control. Also, keep in mind that if you happen to use funnel clouds, you lose all of that crowd control. So that's definitely something you may want to think of. Do you want to have that extra damage for something like the lens, or do you want to actually have some crowd control for your tornadoes? Alternative crowd controls include using something like Airburst. Airburst is a massive radial knockback, an explosive radial knockback, if you will, so you don't even necessarily have to hit them to knock them down, so that's kind of useful. Similar idea with Dive Bomb. So whilst Dive Bomb is not an explosive radial knockback, it is a radial knockdown, so that is definitely something you may want to look at using if you want to crowd control your enemies in your near vicinity. Or if you are fine with flinging them off the map, you could use Airburst in a short distance. Tornadoes alone would have given Zephyr a score of 9 out of 10, and that point would have only been lost because of the relatively uncontrollable movements of those tornadoes. Airburst and Dive Bomb together would have given her a score of 7 out of 10 by themselves, so when you put them all together, I think it's pretty obvious Zephyr gets a crowd control perfect score of 10 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about Zephyr's support capabilities. Zephyr's base kit doesn't actually provide any support capabilities whatsoever. Instead, the only thing that actually seems like a support option is to use the augment for her turbulence, which is Jetstream. Jetstream increases the movement speed and projectile speed of Zephyr and her nearby allies. So basically, allies can run faster, and they also get a bit of projectile flight speed. That means that using a bow, using the Uvona Prime, using other projectile weapons is going to be a little bit easier for allies who happen to be near Zephyr. The only problem is that if you fly away, you're probably going to lose that support capability for your allies, because your allies are probably going to have a much harder time trying to keep up with you. So I feel like overall Zephyr would probably only get a support score of 2 out of 10. That's right, 2 out of 10. She has something, but that's about it. It's only going to be a 2 out of 10.
Good work. We now have control of the rover. Antenno. Things just got more complicated. The corrupted the rover.
Okay, let's talk about Zephyr's kit usability. So most of Zephyr's kit is partially useful. Turbulence is the only ability that I would actually call fully useful in every way, shape, and form. So Turbulence is the only ability that I would score a 2 out of 2. With Tailwind, I feel like you have to look pretty much 100% directly down in order to use Dive Bomb in a much more consistent fashion. What happens if you look at the ground but not necessarily 100% down is that you end up with some weird, awkward ground-hugging flight patterns, and that's kind of annoying. So Tailwind at the moment has a score of 1 out of 2. I feel like if DE wants to improve on this, they should give it the same kind of logic that ground slams have at the moment, which is that if you're actually looking at the ground and then you use your ground slam, you will actually go at that ground. You will then be able to dive bomb on that ground. I feel like that would be a really good idea to improve Tailwind. With Airburst and Tornadoes, this is going to be one of those 3 out of 4 scenarios where one point is going to be lost either from Airburst or Tornadoes. I don't really care which one. But basically, the problem is that when it comes to using them, right now what you can do is you can summon Tornadoes, and then if you use Airburst, you can make your tornadoes bigger. The only thing is that you're actually making your tornadoes taller, which kind of seems really pointless. What is the purpose of increasing the height of a tornado? I don't know. It doesn't actually increase the width of the tornado, nor does it actually increase the grabbing range, if you will, of a tornado. So this kind of seems really pointless. I feel like if airburst and tornadoes were to work really well together, the grabbing range of the tornadoes should be increased if you actually make a tornado a lot bigger. A point is going to be lost from one of these abilities. Together they're going to have a score of 3 out of 4. And finally we have Zephyr's passive, which I feel like is just cute. In normal missions it's completely useless in my opinion. I suppose the only time you'd ever want to use it is for long range flights through tailwind, but as you can find a nice long route to fly in a normal mission, which is damn near impossible, and B, if you happen to be in a large open space like some defense tiles or just the plains at the Alt Vallis. I'll still give it a score of 1 out of 2, but frankly it says a lot when the new Anchored Glide augment that straight up removes the passive for some additional power strength is actually something worth considering. So altogether this will bring Zephyr's kit usability score to 7 out of 10.
Still working on it. Continue to defend.
So with a damage score of 6 out of 10, a survivability score of 7 out of 10, a crowd control score of 10 out of 10, a support score of 2 out of 10, and a kit usability score of 7 out of 10, that brings Zephyr's overall score to 6 out of 10. So despite this being a pass mark, I guess, the score actually makes Zephyr below average, especially compared to the other WarFrames that I've talked about so far. Whether or not that average changes as we continue to go through more WarFrames, I guess we will find out. Even though Zephyr is a below average WarFrame, she's still capable of a lot of crowd control and being able to survive against gunfire, so I think that is something that you may want to look into. For mobile defense and survival missions, Zephyr is a great choice, but I feel like for other mission types, you're probably better off using literally any other WarFrame outside of maybe a small handful. So, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with any of the assessments I have made about Zephyr? Let me know in the comments. The one thing that I'm a little bit iffy about when it comes to this scoring for Zephyr is just the tornado stuff. If you feel like tornadoes deserves a higher score, feel free to let me know why, and we will discuss it further in the comments. I am happy to increase or decrease the score on tornadoes depending on what you have to say. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more WarFrame content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.